This video will contain spoilers for plot points of Hades and Hades 2, but the first half is spoiler-free. The spoiler section will be called out and timestamped, but there will be video clips showing characters that may be considered spoilers. I never thought I'd be into roguelikes, mostly because the idea of dying constantly in a game annoys me. But I played Hades for the first time in 2020 and I was instantly hooked. I'm Catalystiic, or you can just call me Ina, and I want to talk about Hades 2. Hades 2 is developed by Supergiant Games, who also developed Pyre, Bastion, and also the first Hades. They are one of my favorite indie developers, and the work that they put out is always so solid. Hades 2 is following the same early access model as the first Hades, and it was released in May 2024. Overall, the reception has been mostly great. At the time of recording this, it sits at a very positive on Steam, and I am also one of the people that thinks it's fantastic, and I really look forward to what Supergiant is going to do with it moving forward. The gameplay is obviously very similar to the first Hades, but it's also so different. While Zagreus from the first game is focused on martial arts, Melinoe is more focused on spells, which tie into her character of being a witch. This focus on spells means that your attack, special, and your cast each have a mechanic called an Omega move, which is pretty much a heightened version of those moves. These each change depending on the boons or hammers you get on your run. If you didn't play the first game, boons come in the form of powers gifted to you by the Olympian gods, while hammers boost your attack in different ways, whether it's by bursting your attack by a certain percentage or changing it completely. You'll have different weapon options and abilities, which need to be unlocked throughout the game using different materials. These materials are called reagents, and they are gathered each time you do a run, with different materials being found in each of the 4 dungeons you'll be going through, or they can be purchased from a vendor. You'll also have greeneries, which are what you plant in the crossroads, which is your base of operations. Then there are indulgences, which are the ambrosia, nectar, and other things, which are used to raise your bond with various NPCs. I really enjoy the change in gameplay. It's challenging, but I feel like the intricacies of the builds have increased because you have so many options now. You can go a more cast-focused build, or you can just focus on being a physical attacker. I feel like the skill ceiling for this game has the potential to be really high and much more complex compared to the first Hades. But it still doesn't feel as smooth yet. It's hard to describe since you have to sort of come from the first game or maybe even other roguelikes. I'm not sure if it's because I've played exclusively on the Steam Deck. I've only played on my computer maybe twice or 3 times. So most of my experience has been handheld, which could have definitely affected the experience. And sometimes it feels like the inputs aren't registering right or there is a delay. It's just not as smooth of an experience as I would like it to be. Plus, I don't really vibe with any of the weapons yet. Maybe further patches down the line. The only ones I really like are the Sister Blades and then to an extent the Witch's Staff, but that really depends on what boons I get during the run. A big change they made to this game was removing multiple dashes. There is no double dash anymore, which sucks for me because that is what I abused in the first game. I was making Zagreus dash everywhere. Instead, they replaced it with a single dash and a sprint, and to me, it felt really bad. Even with boons, it felt like dashing and sprinting just wasn't good. This was slightly fixed in patch 1, which was released a couple weeks ago, and dashing feels much smoother, but I still don't really use sprint that much. Just a disclaimer, when I was recording footage for this game, it's sort of ironic because one of the boons I got was a sprint boon, and you'll see me experimenting with it in the footage. This is the first time I actually used a sprint boon, and it was working pretty well, but if you pay close attention to my gameplay, I'm not doing very good. I feel like I'm taking too much damage, and I just don't know how to dash and sprint effectively to do a lot of damage and also stay alive. In the past game, it sort of felt like you could just gather all the boons that you wanted, and really mix and match whatever you wanted, but in this game, you really benefit from just boosting one attack. The build I abuse the most is the Aphrodite Omega attack on the Sister Blades, and it just works so well, especially once you upgrade the percentages, and everything will just get murked so fast. Another build I've heard people abuse a lot is the Poseidon Special for the staff, but I personally don't like it too much just because it's so boring to play. It's just mashing Y the whole time, and while it's effective, especially if you have certain hammers or boons, it's just really boring. All of this can be negated by just playing on God mode if you really want to. This mode is available if you just want to experience the story. This mode doesn't make you invulnerable though, it just heightens your damage resistance, and it also increases every time you die up to a max of 80%. Materials you gather are a fun shift in the gameplay for the Crossroads, in contrast with the House of Hades. But there are a lot of materials to gather, and since they are the main way you upgrade your abilities, some runs tend to just be farming runs, which did happen in the first Hades with the darkness mechanic, but I feel like with this game, since there is so much more, it does feel like it's taking a little longer. But it could also be a recency bias on my end because it's been a long time since I've played Hades. My Zagreus is extremely powered up now, so of course I haven't had to gather darkness in a long time. Also, I don't know if this is a hot take, but I think I would have rather done without the gardening mechanic. You usually use these flowers to make incantations in the cauldron, which will either change stuff in the Crossroads or in your dungeons. Also, you need to unlock stuff in the cauldron to move on to other aspects of the story in some ways. I'd rather be able to add permanent flowers to the Crossroads rather than stuff you just need to harvest. I hope there will be more customization in the future, since that was one of my favorite things to do in the House of Hades. But maybe they're not allowing customization because that sort of adds to the narrative of the game in a way. Besides my issues, the game is still so much fun to play for an early access game. And most of all, it's solid. Like I said, I played mostly on my Steam Deck, but I only had one crash. Besides that, I haven't ran into anything else besides a few audio issues, but it's so good for an early access game. Also, everyone is still really hot. Melinoe is a witch and the princess of the underworld who is trying to vanquish the forces of the Titan of Time. You are trying to get down towards hell rather than away from it in comparison to Zagreus. He'll get the help of the Olympian gods along the way, while Melinoe slowly gets stronger each run. I feel like that's a very simple way to describe Hades 2 without going too in-depth into spoilers, but I am just going to say this before I move on to the spoiler section. This game is Supergiant's first sequel, and I truly believe that it benefits from being a sequel. In the first Hades, Zagreus was so focused on getting out of the underworld because of lingering problems with his father. To sum it up, Zagreus is able to solve his issues with his dad, bring his mom home, Persephone, and then also reunite the extended family of Olympus with Hades. The conflict in this first game is very light. Zagreus is obviously upset with his dad, but Hades isn't out to destroy his son. He's more irritated and yet oddly proud in the end. This tone shifts a lot in Hades 2. It's nowhere near as dark as actual Greek mythology, but you find out early on that Melinoe doesn't know her family at all. Hades, Persephone, and Zagreus were attacked shortly after she was born by the Titan of Time, Chronos, who is her grandfather on Hades' side. Hades was able to get Hecate to rescue her and ultimately raise her. Melinoe was raised to save her family from the clutches of Chronos. Everyone you know from the first game is held captive by him except for Hypnos. What's worse is that they've been captive for an unspecified amount of time. But it's been long enough for Melinoe to grow into an adult, which is a nebulous term for Greek gods, but it could have been an extremely long time. I really love the first cast, and to see what Chronos has done to the family, and as a result what Melinoe has had to endure without them, is really sad. I didn't realize this would be her dynamic with the past cast, and it was just so sad to learn. It makes you want to beat Chronos even more, which I haven't done yet. But at the end of the day, Melinoe doesn't really know these people, and she's been raised to rescue strangers, which is really depressing to think about. I wanted to end on talking about the current cast of Hades 2. Melinoe has her own friends and confidants similar to Zagreus. She was raised by Hecate, a witch and a titan, who is her mentor. The main people you interact with at first are Nemesis and Odysseus, with Moros coming in a bit later. Hypnos is also at the crossroads, but he is in a unwakeable sleep. Each have their own interactions with Melinoe, and it's so humorous because she's so serious. And you can just tell there's a lot of history with all these characters by the way they interact with one another. People like to call her boring, which is so sad, because I mean, I guess she is a little bit more boring because she's serious. She's much more serious about the task she has on hand. She doesn't necessarily have the luxuries that Zagreus does, and I think her character makes sense. Like, she was literally raised to rescue her family. Of course she's gonna be more serious, but it's not like the whole time she's serious. She's very capable of joking around with her friends. But what is really funny to me is her relationship with Hypnos. It's so parasocial, and she is just projecting this relationship onto him, and it's so funny because she thinks he is so wise when we know Hypnos is smart, but he just doesn't use it or apply it at all. And I love Hypnos. I can't wait to wake him up, and I miss him. I miss him so much, and I hope he's okay. Overall, even for an early access game, I would highly recommend buying Hades 2 and just supporting Supergiant throughout this process. But if you haven't played the first Hades, I would highly recommend playing that first if you're curious. I think it will just add to the experience of Hades 2, and it's just such a good game. You have time to wait for Hades 2 to just get even better and better with each patch, and while you wait, you might as well play through the first Hades so you have a better understanding of what Melinoe is doing and what the characters are doing in the second game. I have really high faith that Supergiant will continue to update Hades 2 and will be taking reviews into consideration. They've already released one patch which fixed the dashes and sprints to an extent, which was a really big complaint at first. I didn't experience the first Hades in early access, but I've heard that the developers were very receptive to any criticism. It's just so solid and impressive for an early access game. As I said, my main issues were with the weapon and combat balancing. I also think with this scope of the game, even though it's bigger than the first Hades, it is a very manageable early access title. It's obvious they still have a lot of story to explore, but since this isn't a massive RPG like Baldur's Gate 3, I don't think we necessarily have to worry about different acts feeling unpolished. This is no hate towards Baldur's Gate 3. I love Baldur's Gate 3 and what Larian has done, but we all know that Act 1 is extremely solid, while Act 3 feels objectively more unpolished. I feel like there would have been other studios that would have released this as a full game for a much higher price, and I really look forward to how this game evolves moving forward, and I have high hopes for the final product. Thank you for watching this video. Please do all the things if you enjoyed, and let me know if you're playing Hades 2. Have you beat the final boss yet? I wish I have, but as much fun as I'm having with this game, 22 hours in, I still haven't beat him. He makes me very angry. Wish me luck as I continue my journey on beating him, because who knows how long it will take me. Maybe I just suck at Hades 2. Maybe Supergiant will release a magic patch that magically makes me good at the game. But we can only hope. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.